Hello, immigration lawyers. Hello, immigration consultants, and welcome to this webinar. And the title of the webinar is Ethical Obligations of Immigration Lawyers for British Columbia versus Immigration Consultants. We will do a comparative analysis of the ethical obligations of lawyers versus the ethical obligations of immigration consultants. So, in our introduction, first of all, my name again is Dominic Therian. I'm an immigration lawyer called here in BC, but I was also called to the Bar of Quebec in 2002, and I was recently called to the Bar of California. So my main practice is business immigration, so I've been talking about and dealing with these issues for nearly 17, 18 years now. And I'm also a teacher at various education institutions here in British Columbia to immigration consultants and various immigration consultant programs. So even though I'm not an immigration consultant, I'm an immigration lawyer, I have a good understanding of both worlds. So who is this webinar for? Obviously, if you're an immigration lawyer and if you want to know more about your ethical obligations related to your immigration practice, this webinar could be very useful to your practice. But also, if you're an immigration consultant and you want to know more about your ethical obligations as an immigration consultant, this webinar is for you. As we will see in the market, sometimes there's a lot of confusion about what an immigration lawyer can do versus what an immigration consultant can do. And as we will see a little bit later, there are things that both immigration lawyers and immigration consultants can do, but we will also see that there are some difference. There are things that immigration lawyers can perform and that are not available to immigration consultants. And the background of our analysis will be our ethical obligations, both as a lawyer and as an immigration consultant. And I think the starting point of our webinar, the starting point of this analysis has to be a very important court case by the Supreme Court of Canada. It's a landmark case, the Law Society of British Columbia versus Mangat, and the citation is year 2001, SCR 113. You probably heard about it. You may have read it. If you have not, I strongly encourage you to read it. But that's a starting point. Before 2001, immigration consultants could not provide immigration services to clients. So it was a little bit of a void there. Went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decided that yes, immigration consultants should be allowed to provide immigration services under certain conditions, and one of them was the creation of an organization, of a regulatory body that would supervise, discipline the members or the immigration consultants. And today in 2019, 2020, this body is ICCRC, and that stands for Immigration Consultants of Canada Regulatory Council. It's the equivalent of a law society, but for immigration consultants. So that's one of the differences also between lawyers and immigration consultants. As lawyers, as we know, we are governed and disciplined and supervised by a provincial regulatory body. Law societies in Canada is a provincial body. The Law Society of BC, the Quebec Bar Association, so on and so forth. For immigration consultants, ICCRC is a federal regulatory body. So that's one of the differences. One thing we have to mention regarding immigration consultants, even though you're a member of ICCRC and you have the right to provide immigration services to clients, and we'll see that a little bit later, there's an exception. You can provide services for all provinces of Canada as an immigration consultant, if you're registered with ICCRC, except the province of Quebec. Quebec has a special, separate immigration system, and they have their own regulatory body, so keep that in mind. To provide services related to Quebec immigration programs, you also need to be registered, or you need to be registered by the Quebec regulatory body. We're not going to talk about that today. we will talk about ICCRC. So for everything I'll say about ethical obligations of immigration consultants, it applies to all provinces except the province of Quebec. One major difference also between immigration consultants and immigration lawyers is the relationship they have with the immigration authorities and the court system. There are some things that lawyers can do that immigration consultants cannot do, and we'll look at that a little bit later on in this webinar, but a few quick examples that come to mind. For instance, an immigration lawyer can appear before the Federal Court of Canada or the Supreme Court of Canada on behalf of a client, something that an immigration consultant cannot do. Immigration consultants are allowed to appear before the IRB, before the Immigration and Refugee Board, but are not allowed to appear before a court of law. Lawyers are allowed to appear before the IRB, before the Immigration and Refugee Board, and also allowed to appear, of course, before a court of law on behalf of a client. Another difference in some jurisdictions like Quebec, for instance, an immigration lawyer can attend an immigration interview with the client, something that an immigration consultant cannot do. They cannot attend a Quebec immigration interview with a client. Only a lawyer can do that. So we'll take a look at this in more details moving forward, but for now, just keep in mind that there are some things that immigration lawyers can do and immigration consultants cannot do, okay? What you will need to follow this webinar, I would recommend four things. One, you need to have a copy of IRPA, of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. We'll take a close look at this act in light of our ethical obligations. The second document that you'll probably need is the ICCRC Code of Professional Ethics. So we'll take a close look at some of the main ethical obligations that an immigration consultant has. So that document will be quite useful to do that. You will also need the ICCRC Retainer Agreement Regulation. We will see that for immigration consultants, not all the ethical obligations are in the professional code, in the Code of Professional Ethics. Some of these ethical obligations are in some of their regulations, including the Retainer Agreement Regulation. And finally, the fourth document I would recommend for you to have to follow this webinar is the Code of Professional Conduct for British Columbia lawyers. I think that will help you in your comparative analysis to have all these documents in front of you as we talk about them as we go along. So this is it for our introduction, and in a few seconds we will start our first topic. We will have a total of 7 topics, and in a few seconds we will start our first topic, which is an analysis of Section 91 of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. So talk to you in a few seconds.